Welcome to the American Intelligence Media. I am your host, Thomas Paine, and I'm here today, amazingly enough, with two people, Michael McKibben and Doug, how do you say your last name? Fisher?
Doug? Fischesser, yes.
Fisher. Oh boy, that's a tough one.
Fischesser. Just Fischesser. It's just Fish and then Esser, yep.
Fischesser. Thank you so much for being with us. I understand that you are a director of development in a hospital in Connersville, Indiana. And the reason we're talking with you today is because of a very strange story that Michael McKibben told me. So you can give him credit for this conversation today. And it gave us an idea that kind of shocked us because it was in a way, a nutshell of what's happening in America and what was happening to you in that meeting. So let me frame this for our listeners. And those who know Michael McKibben, of course, from Leader Technologies, we're going to be speaking about that company. And Doug, you are just, first off, let's frame this for a second. You work in a hospital and you had to transform one of your floors into an opium treatment clinic, or the opioid crisis treatment clinic. Is that true?
That is true, yes. We are turning our third floor part of the hospital, which includes about 18 patient rooms, into a detox unit for, obviously, as we all know what's going on with the opioid crisis, not only in our county, the state of Indiana, and obviously all over the nation and the world, but we've decided to basically turn the third floor into a detox unit because there are not too many of those types of units around not only the east central part of Indiana but the whole state of Indiana.
And really what you're doing there is you are responding to the huge amount of unemployment because of the lack of manufacturing in your area, the lack of all kinds of American industry, which comes out of American inventiveness. And, the American dream of creating things and owning your own intellectual property, which could, in fact, be moving us forward, but it's been sucked out into so many other countries that what we get is what I call the reverse opium wars. And that it's really a very significant image to see that this happened to China many, many years ago, and now it's happening to us. 60,000 people a year now die directly due to overdoses and taking these opioids in all of its different forms. Is that about right?
Yeah, that's about right. I've got some stats from Indiana, but drug overdoses have risen, so sharply in Indiana that they basically overtaken the number of motor vehicle deaths in 2010. So obviously, at this point now, 60,000 is a good number. So we see, it affects. You talk about the economy, what it does to small towns. We're a Rust Belt. If you could say that, a Rust Belt town that has been, we've been decimated with factories and industry and manufacture leaving our area for obviously Mexico and overseas and those types of things, and the opioid crisis is just part of what affects what we do, not only locally but statewide and all of that. So. Yeah, it's definitely a huge factor in what it's done with our economic base and everything in our town.
And I understand that really this opioid crisis that's happening now is more profound than the heroin crisis or any other drug crisis we've ever had in America, and that it coincides with people losing their jobs. It coincides with what President Trump is talking about, that our entire industry, our markets have left America and left these towns like Connersville just to basically turn inside out. And it's sad to say that then your hospital has to become, the only way that it can probably stay alive is to be able to service the people who are a part of this, the victims who are part of this crisis. And it just was very sad for me to think of that and then think of the other thing, which is you are a shareholder in Leader Technologies. Now, people may not understand what that is. That's a group that long before scalable social networking happened had come up with the invention, the intellectual property for that, and you bought into that as a shareholder, in a way trying to offset what you probably saw happening in your own little city there in Connersville, Indiana, and seeing this implosion of American inventiveness, American marketing, American commercialism, American manufacturing. And so you bought into a company that you could see had a great future. Obviously, you were right, because look what happened with that intellectual property. It became what I think they just calculated has produced as many as almost 500,000 jobs just since they got the ability to make social media scalable. So what you bought into there, which was a very significant purchase, by the way, from what I understand, was in effect your dreams and your hopes. But what do you end up with? You end up with that intellectual property being stolen by the Patent Office and by agents of the United States government at the top level. But you witnessed all this throughout all of this time, and that 20 years of trying to fight to be recognized, just to be paid for what it is that you invested in, that was a true American inventiveness, the kind of things that would turn around to Connersville. Imagine if all of Facebook and Gmail and YouTube and Twitter all came to rest in Connersville as a result of the invention and the intellectual property that you bought into as a shareholder. So when I see that you had a meeting there in your hospital, in your opioid clinic, crisis clinic, and I'm not sure exactly the technology or the technical names for it, but when you're there, and I saw through your eyes for a moment, Doug, and it broke my heart.
Thomas, can I interject here about the story of how I met Doug, which was back in, I think, about 2001. As we know now from our story, that is when the federal government was just really gearing up their theft of our technology. Of course, we didn't know that, but we were starting to feel the effects of it with our cash flow. And I can truly say that had the folks in Connersville, including Doug and probably 40 or 50 others, not invested in Leader at that time, we would not be here today. So the world population can truly thank the people in God's country of Connersville, Indiana, for the invention of social networking. And that's not just a figure of speech. That is absolutely what happened.
Yeah, it's we've got a great group of investors from this area, and obviously our plans and our vision of what Leader was doing at the time and what we were trying to do and all of that. It does parallel sort of the story, on what's going on in not only Connersville but other small towns and where you work hard for something, you invest yourself in working at whatever you're producing. Our area was a big automotive manufacturer going back to the 30s and 40s, and that's really the basis of how manufacturing and its history got started in the Connersville area. But obviously, when you go to work for someone or somebody, and whether you're investing money in it or whether you're putting your hard-earned time and energy into it, when Connersville lost a lot of its manufacturing base, it's basically the same thing. Somebody's taken it away from you, and it's a tough thing to deal with. Losing your job, or in our case, in Leader's case, losing what we produced and what's ours. So obviously, it's a very big parallel in what goes on with a lot of communities and a lot of people and things like that. So obviously, we're.
So Doug, did you send in the Miller Act, and do you want paid?
Yes.
Good.
Let's explain that, gentlemen. Let's explain that. May I? The Miller Act request is basically to say to the president, pay us for the work we've already done. And once that happens, then all kinds of dominoes fall. You could literally see reaction that could go all the way back to the IBM Eclipse Foundation, and their fraudulent activity. And then I think I got the numbers wrong. How many people have resulted from the intellectual property that you guys created? What was the number? 465?
No, it's 460 million.
Yeah, I got it
jobs.
Wrong. 460 million.
Yeah, 460 million jobs, and this is based on a Deloitte Haskins study that Facebook commissioned back in 2015. So these are hard numbers.
And if this intellectual property, which Trump is always harping on the Chinese stealing our intellectual property, well, it happens right here in our country because a company called Serco does all the screening for a patent office, as well as David Kapos from IBM was the director of the patent office, and they basically steal patents. Let's just be quite frank about it. And if those patents weren't stolen and sent to either large monopoly companies like the Silicon Valley companies, or outside of the country to China and to other countries that make things for us, then we would be quite well off. And we can already see that some of the changes that have happened when manufacturing is focused on America again. But what comes to mind also, Doug, with what you said, it just struck me so deeply. When you lose your job, and as you're talking about, the real home of manufacturing is right there in the heart of America. When you lose your job and you can't figure that out, most of the time you get a little upset. You go to the doctor gives you some meds, and you don't know what they are. You take them, you don't really think much about them. I've been in that circumstance, and I was taking opioids for shingles from pain. I had no idea they could kill me. They almost killed me. This can happen to anyone. This isn't a bunch of drug fiends that we're talking about. This is talking about your white-collar worker. I was a professional superintendent. I didn't think I could be addicted to drugs, and when I was hit with shingles, which caused a lot of pain, I took the drugs they told me. No one ever told me it was Vicodin. And then what I want to add to that is, Doug, can you help us understand how it is that there are opioids now that are 10 times stronger than the ones that we even need, which cause you to be so addicted, but now there's 10 times stronger, and there's this fentanyl and other ones. Don't those have to come from a pharmacy? Who is making a drug that is 100 times more powerful than heroin? This is insanity. And then I understand it's shipped across the southern border somehow, comes into our country, and you can buy a pill that may be 10 to 100 times stronger than anything you've ever taken, including heroin. Am I exaggerating? That's the way I read in my very naive interpretation of these kind of things.
Well, we see. First of all, it's very, very easy to get addicted to these things. Obviously, I've never really taken any of this kind of stuff and don't want to. But we see a huge impact on you talk about jobs and the economy and people working and things like that. We've lost so many jobs over the last 20 or so years. So first of all, the problem gets to be that, okay, these people aren't working. So now, whatever kind of physical and mental trauma they go through, losing their job, number one, and then number two, not being able to find a job. Obviously, they get involved in the whole drug scenario. And first of all, it's very, very easy to get addicted. I mean, some of it they say, you take it one time and you're addicted. So I mean, that's kind of unbelievable, but obviously it's happening. And we see in our ERs, for example, our emergency room. I mean, some weekends we've had up to 10 and 12 overdoses a night in a 12-hour time span. Cincinnati at one point back in, I think it was November, had 22 overdoses come into one of their hospitals. So, obviously, it's a kind of a dog chasing its tail type of thing. We see it in here. We are a huge Medicaid area, or a Medicaid. Our payer mix in our hospital is almost 80% Medicaid, and that's unheard of. But it's not unheard of for our area because we have so many people that aren't working.
What is your statistic for the state compared to your county?
Fayette County, our county, Fayette County, is number one in unemployment in the state, and it's been that way really over the last, I'd say, 10 years. We've vacillated a little bit between first, second, and third, but as of the last figures I got were December, and we were, even though we're at like 5.0, which is at one point we were at like 15%.
And didn't you tell me
7 years ago?
Didn't you tell me at one point you were producing almost half of the dishwashers in the United States?
We were. Design and Manufacturing Company was started. A man named Sammy Regenstreet back in the late '60s, and he built that company to. They basically, like I said, they were building 50% of the dishwashers sold in the nation.
What were some of the brands?
Sears, Speed Queen, Norge, did some for Whirlpool, but Sears were their biggest brand. But and they basically got bought out by White Consolidated in 1987, and White closed this plant and moved it to Kinston, North Carolina. So, that's just one example of what happened, and they employed basically almost, I'd say, 1,500 people. At their highest employment, I would say in the late '70s and early '80s. But what happens? Another thing about this is what's going on with people that aren't working and getting into the whole scenario is that even we do have 2 or 3 companies that really are hiring and doing well. But the biggest problem we have in Connersville and the county, we can't, people that, there's 2 or 3 companies that are trying to hire people, but they can't get people that pass drug tests. That's the biggest thing.
Wow.
We sit here with the highest unemployment rate, and we have jobs, but they can't pass a drug test.
So, Doug, basically,
I've 2 or 3.
You're ground zero for unemployment and ground zero for the opioid crisis. So per capita, do you think that Connersville, Indiana may be per capita even more embroiled in this opioid crisis than even I think, what do you call it, Cincinnati or Cleveland, one or the other?
Right, yeah. Oh, yeah. In Indiana per capita we are. Yeah, we're the highest opioid user, however you want to phrase it. As far as Indiana is concerned, we're right in the hotbed of that particular area. I don't have the stats here, but just to give you a stat on the impact on businesses in Indiana, what the opioid use is doing in Indiana, 80% of the Indiana employers have observed prescription drug misuse by their employees. And another key fact is Indiana led the nation in pharmacy robberies with 367 incidents from January 2013 to May of 2016. So that you start talking about how does this problem affect economies and towns and overall state business. That gives you an idea of, and again, it goes back to not only people that are actually working, employers are seeing problems, but people that are trying to go to work, they can't pass a drug test. So all of a sudden you start looking at, gee, how does it impact our town? Well, it impacts the hospital, it impacts businesses, it impacts employers, it impacts the whole. Like I say, it's a 360 circle of what it does to not only a small town, but obviously the state and the nation. Obviously
Doug,
the nation.
I've seen that big auto parts manufacturing facility you have there. It's a massive
Visteon,
building.
yes. Yeah.
And what happened to the auto parts manufacturing?
Well, what happened there is Ford Philco, it was called way back in the mid '60s, started making radios and those types of things for cars, and then it turned into a Ford plant in, let's say, the mid '70s, and they started making all the air conditioning units, compressors, and all of that type of thing for automobiles. We made, obviously for Ford, but we also did Chrysler and GM, basically all the air conditioning and compressor units. And that got to be, by the late 70s and early 80s, that rose to the highest employment there was about 4,000 people. And so obviously that was the biggest employer in town, huge manufacturing, automotive presence, and with that sparked tier 1 and tier 2 side manufacturing companies that basically kind of grew up around the area. And so that also affected obviously some smaller companies that grew out of Visteon's products. So, and it basically kept going to basically with economy, kind of the automotive economy kind of started to take a downtrend in the early 2000s, and actually by 2007 Visteon closed, and basically there were only about 800 employees there at that time. But
Where'd that business go?
A lot of that business went to Mexico. Most of the Connersville business went to Mexico. Visteon, Ford spun off Visteon, I think back in the it was around 1999, 2000 time frame. I'm not real sure about that, but Visteon spun off of Ford, and it was around for probably 6 or 7, 8 years or whatever, and then of course the economy was starting getting bad, and I mean the automotive industry and what they were doing here basically was losing a lot of jobs to Mexico, and they had a plant down there, and one thing leads to another. They closed this plant here, and what that plant did, what the effect that did on our town and our county, we lost about 65 to 70% of the tax base when Visteon closed. So there again, you see what a town of, at that point in time, population was about 23,000 in the county, about 13,000 in town. So all of a sudden, a city government loses 70% of their tax base. That's catastrophic. So that's what happened there. And obviously, the hospital's been around over 105 years. Had a lot of specialty clinics part of it. It was a 100-bed, medium-sized hospital, and really with the insurance effect that Visteon had on obviously the hospital and other things around town, it pretty much devastated what. And then of course 2008 and 2009 economic downturn showed up. So yeah, it really affected obviously what the hospital does. Now we're really more of an outpatient clinic. Obviously the new detox unit is really going to help, but for the most part, and again, I get back to our payer mix. It's pretty much Medicaid. So we really, to give you an idea, get paid about 20 cents to 25 cents on the dollar through Medicaid. So it really what's happened with the economic downturn and people manufacturing and jobs leaving and all of that. Obviously, again it goes right back around to we look at, why is opioids and all the drug usage is getting worse? Well, hey, when you start looking at all that, it pretty much tells the tale. So,
well, in the midst of that, Thomas, I remember Visteon was still in operation when we started having shareholder presentations over in Connersville, and in the midst of that, some 40 members of the community there, farmers, agronomists, landscape architects, others, saw the vision of what we were building at Leader and put their hard-earned money in it. And they expected a return. And so one of the reasons I keep going with finding justice in our story is because I know that these people in Connersville stepped up for me. And what we are now asking is that the president step up for all of us.
American innovation has been the foundation upon which America was built. And if American innovation wasn't being stolen at the patent office, sold to foreign countries, and monopolies controlling them every which way you turn, you would have cities like Connersville being able to build entire industries from American innovation. And so what you're describing here is from every walk of life, these people in your area, when they began their investment with you, had it followed through, which it should have, because it did. People stole it. They became very rich over it because they centralized it. They made a monopoly of it. They basically, it's a racket. It's a mafia of sorts. And if that didn't happen, and if innovation came back to America and to the heartland and to where manufacturing can actually take place and we can then claim our own intellectual property, I can see it being the cure for these wars that Trump has already declared. He declared a war on opiates. He declared a war upon the criminals that are trafficking drugs as well as people and all the other crimes that he named. He says we're in a national emergency. He says we need to focus on small businesses, on entrepreneurialism. He says we need to do our own manufacturing, that we need to put tariffs on other countries. All of these things are in the right direction. But if we can bring this to his attention, what you have in fact become what I would call the archetypal example of ground zero of everything that he's talking about in terms of making America great again is focused right there in Connersville. It's focused right there in your Leader Technologies shareholders meeting, where in good faith you saw the direction that America can go, and yet it was snatched from you by basically an institutionalized system that does this. And that's what we're fighting against, and that's the reason Aim for Truth is so interested in your story, Doug, and so interested in your story, Michael, because this is the same story of Americans. This could, if we took the free energy revolution and the inventions that have been made here, and we toppled the bureaucratic, monopolistic groups that make sure that it does not advance, we would transform America. No one would have to pay taxes anymore. We wouldn't have to worry about tariffs. We would be able to manufacture our own goods. Instead of right now, what are we worried about? China's attacking Taiwan. Taiwan at one point made 51% of our manufactured goods in America. Why did an island that far away do it when we didn't do it? We can do this. And Connersville is a perfect example of that. But we also need to realize that this opium war it's against us. This isn't about people just overdosing on their pharmaceuticals. This isn't about naivety. This is about serious drugs beyond anything anyone's ever seen before, attacking these vulnerable people in places like Connersville who, as you say, lose their jobs, can't get a job, and even if they could and a job was available, and it is sometimes, they can't pass the drug test. Because why? They're taking either the drugs their doctor told them or the drugs they might have had to substitute from buying on the street, which in some cases are lethal. Do you see lethal cases coming into your clinic, Doug?
Yes, we do. Yeah, from time to time. We've had, I can't tell you. We've had a couple overdoses that have died. So again, we've also done a pretty good job of helping people too. Actually, Fayette Regional, our hospital in Connersville, is the #1 hospital per capita in Indiana for saving lives of overdose patients. So
wow.
Obviously we're doing a pretty good job with that. But there again, you're always going to have, like I said, the day we had 6 or 8 overdoses, we had one that was fatal. But for the most part, there's a lot of things you can do to pull people out of it, and Narcan and some of the other things, and I mean, obviously we're doing what we can, obviously, to keep people alive. And sometimes it gets, you get to the point where you get so many people in here. I've talked to some of our EMT guys that are friends of mine, and that they tell me sometimes that they see the same person week after week, and they're trying to revive them week after week. I mean, it's an ongoing thing. I mean, they get brought in, they revive them, they get them at least back on their feet, and sure enough, they see them the next week, or they see them in the same week. So yeah, it you know the problem is real, and we see the numbers. I mean, it's you know, and when you hear of, you know, on the news, you hear about the crisis and everything. It really is. I mean, it's a bad situation, and we you know, we're going to open the detox unit will open July 1st, and we plan on we will be full, I think, from day one on. We're not going to be looking for business. It's going to be full from the time we open the doors, and you know, obviously it's kind of bad to say, wow, that's good business, but you know, unfortunately, you know, the problem that we're doing this for is unfortunate, but geez, you know, we just want to get people better. We want to get them you know, out in the community clean. Obviously, that's going to help. Obviously, the employment situation. It's going to help them. It's going to help the economy in town. You know, you start looking at what it's going to do. If we're successful at it, it's obviously going to do a lot for obviously our communities, our state, and you know, the economic situation, and for the town. You know.
Well, Thomas, think about the cash that would come to them if the Miller Act was paid to the 40 or 50 shareholders over there. I mean, there's so much could turn around quickly.
Oh,
yes. We've talked a little bit about that, haven't we, Mike? About what we can do with as far as helping what not only goes on here in Connersville, but other places, our other
absolutely with our other stockholders, and I know what I intend to do as a payback. But so there's just a whole lot that could happen, and it would be really great if the president could come there and visit you. That's what I'm hoping happens.
He's in a war. Obviously, he's in a war against this. You're ground zero.
Yep.
Why shouldn't he visit? Because if he signed the Miller Act, the best a place that he could sign it is like in Connersville, where signing the recognition to give the intellectual property back to Americans would be a revolution. He would, at the same moment that he signed that, he would change so many different things that would come downstream of that. But I think it's a very, very good idea. And, you know, I got to salute you in what you do there. It's kind of sad, though, when the hospital might be the only successful industry. And then again, it isn't, because you don't get paid enough to make it work. And yet that's all that we're left in some of these towns where there used to be manufacturing. Nothing's left but the hospital and the medical care. And then people start taking these drugs, and sometimes people don't understand. Opioids kill you in your sleep. Your heart stops. If you take Vicodin long enough, it stops your breathing, and that stops your heart. And this is common. So if you take Vicodin, an opioid, for 2 months or longer, it actually can kill you, and you wouldn't even know it. So there are many people die from this that don't even know that that's what caused their death. So what we see here is a real war, and this war is against Americans, and it's the pharmaceutical companies who are not being honest and making sure that there's plenty of these drugs available. I wanted to ask, Doug, in your community, does law enforcement have much to do with this opioid crisis?
Well, yes, they're going to be very much a part of what we're doing. Obviously, of course, they're on the battle lines of it every day, and we've actually set up a drug court, which is kind of an off type of it's a court basically that some of these users and some of the people that you know, that get caught and are thrown in jail. First of all, the jail population is about 20% over than what it should be. I mean, we just don't have. We have room for about 120 inmates, and it's at like 160 or 170 at this point. So, as you can tell, not only, you know, obviously this situation here is affecting obviously that situation, but we're working with them that in through the drug courts, they obviously will be brought in here, and obviously that's going to help, you know, what they're doing and the jail population and things like that. Plus, obviously, it's going to help clean them up too. So, they're very much a part of the program and have been a part of the program in in setting this whole thing up for a year or so. So yeah, they're going to be very much involved in it too, as they are every day, obviously on the streets and things like that. So, yep, they're a very big part of the situation.
So this has changed your culture from top to bottom there in Connersville.
Oh, sure, yeah, it has. Yep, it's been. It's been a problem for a while, and like I say, it's kind of a 360 thing. It's a dog chasing its tail type of thing, and it affects, obviously, as we've talked, a lot of different areas. I mean, again, with the loss of manufacturing and the business base that we have. Just to give you an example, the school system is the biggest employer in the county, and the hospital is the second biggest. Back 20 years ago, we were 15th and 20th. As a comparison. So, that gives you an idea that how much it's been devastated, how much the manufacturing base and the economic base has been devastated. And I'll say this, with the new program that we're setting up, we'll probably add about 120 jobs. So obviously, that's going to be a good thing for the community, because there'll be professional level type jobs and things like that. So I mean, that's going to be, that's going to help too. So that's just another maybe a good thing that's going to come out of this whole program here at the hospital.
I like the idea that Michael had. People might not understand that Leader Technologies had many branches to it. So there was the communication, there was a Leader board, there was these dashboards, there was this, and that. If one single branch of Leader Technologies came to Connersville, it would have transformed that entire city. And again, would have put the power back into the hands of we the people instead of to foreign countries who benefit from our manufacturing. And I can go into all of those kind of things, but what I want to again stress here is just the vision that came to you when you saw a way out. You saw light at the end of the tunnel by investing in Leader Technology. What do you see as the light at the end of the tunnel now for you, Doug, in Connersville, and with what Michael is doing with the struggle, carrying forward the shareholder struggle with Leader Technology and trying to bring it to the attention of the president and or any other way so that you could actually be recognized for what it was that was stolen and be remunerated for it? What is the light at the end of the tunnel for you?
Well, I think obviously with what can happen at Leader, and if we're successful in getting back what we're owed, obviously the 30 or 40 shareholders in this area, I know we've discussed somewhat. Obviously, we would like to put back into the community, whether it be the hospital or whether it be the school system or whether it would be whatever it might be, the foundation here at the hospital or the community foundation. We've got some different things that we're trying to do in town. Some different the Whitewater River goes right through basically the east side of town, and we're looking at putting in new soccer fields and new baseball fields and a boat ramp down on the river and just something, the things that would help tourists and we have a small railroad in town that takes trips down to the south, down to a small town, Metamora, Indiana, which is a kind of an old town with a lot of antiques in it and things like that. There's just a lot of things that we're trying to do in Connersville to help to help the vitality and everything that's kind of get back Connersville to where it was 20 and 30 years ago. I mean, the tourist industry was pretty popular around this area. It's in a really nice part of southeastern Indiana, and there's some state parks around. We have about an 18-mile reservoir just south of town, and obviously we have golf courses down there. But it's pretty. It was pretty vibrant in the summer as far as people from southwestern Ohio would come over, enjoy the lake. So yeah, there's a lot there's a lot of things that Connersville itself and the people in Connersville are trying to do to make the area and the what we're doing with the people that are still here. I mean, there's still a lot of people here, but now population has decreased probably over 10% over the last 10 years, I think, based on the figures I have. But it's still it's a great town to live in. It's a great town to raise your kids. It's got a great school system. So obviously, the quality of life, we want to increase the quality of life and help the quality of life that the people have here, and the EDG is doing a good job. They're working hard to get new industry in, and we have a 3/4 empty old Vistion building. It's over 2 million square feet. That we're trying to attract new business, and there has been a little bit of new business coming in. So we're just trying to help the quality of life in Connersville, and we hope that, hey, if Leader can be successful in getting this back, obviously we want to be a part of that. So that's sort of the light at the end of the tunnel.
That's beautiful. If you could get some industry and manufacturing back in there, then life will come back to Connersville, and it sounds like you are totally have your finger on the pulse beat of the good things going on there. Michael, you mentioned you like to go to Connersville for a certain reason, and even though Leader Technology is centered in Columbus, Ohio, you come all the way over there. Why is it you do that?
Well, we've raised money from various investors around the country, and we have quite a core of people down in Tucson, Arizona, and there is a particular family down there by the name of the Hopkins, and they come from Connersville. So we basically were introduced to the community from one of those investors by the name of Vern Hopkins. And now I've met more of the Hopkinses in Connersville, and they started introducing us to others, and that's how we met Doug. And so it was networking. I was just doing sales, and one person introduced us to another, and I probably made, I'm going to guess, maybe 15 or 20 sales presentations there for financing back in 2001, and those people stepped up. So I owe them a lot.
I understand you describe them to me as real people of the earth, real
very down to earth, very loving people.
Well, I want to see Connersville come back to life. I want to see Leader Technology be able to come back to the place where you've had such a good grounding and foundational work to get it going, and to see those shareholders be given what they are owed, and then to be made right, to be made whole. And that's what needs to happen with all of these stolen patents. We need to make things whole. Right. We need to stop the monopolies. We need to stop the vicious type of economic terrorism where very centralized companies simply buy all their competition. That's what you could see with almost all of these Silicon Valley companies. They simply buy their competition. And when that happens, that isn't the American way. That isn't the way the Patent Office is supposed to work. That isn't the way American inventions or American intellectual property is supposed to work. So I am personally seeing that Connersville and your meeting the other night for the shareholders of Leader Technology was a perfect archetypal example of what President Donald Trump is talking about. If we want to make America great again, we have to do those things that he's pointed out. We have to stop the drug opioid crisis. We have to reinvigorate cities. We have to bring manufacturing back to America. We have to protect intellectual property rights. We have to stop shipping everything to other countries. And we have to put America first. If we did, we would see that there wouldn't be such a need for all these drugs and these opioids. We'd see that people, when they're given a chance to get to work and to use good American innovation and that amazing American spirit that has driven innovation throughout the world for so long, if that is again given the credence and the due and given the justice that it deserves in the Patent Office and by the federal government, then I think that we can see America healing, and we'll see places like Connerville, go from being the worst unemployment and the worst per capita opioid crisis happening in this previously strong manufacturing town. We'll see that all turn around, and that's what I see as my vision for the future for both Leader Technology and for Connersville. And I want to thank both of you today, Doug and Michael, for speaking with us about this, because it just struck our heartstrings when we heard this story. It was just so powerful that we just had to bring it to the attention of other people. So I'll end now, but gentlemen, do you have other things you'd like to say to close off this talk for today?
No, I think that was a good summary. And Doug, thank you for all that you do down there in Connersville, and for hosting our shareholder meetings. And I can still remember the other day when I said, "What else can we do?" And you said, "Well, we've got this opening coming up. Let's get the president here."
We'll kind of see what we can do. Obviously, we'll give it a try. We'll see where it ends up. He just may show up, and we might have a pretty good party. So I don't know. We'll see. But obviously,
whether he does or not, the point is we need to get your story out.
That's right. That's right. I mean, it's we've got a story here in Connersville, and we've got a story here at Leader, and I think it's all intertwined, and there's a lot of variables in all of that, and a lot of parallels in what's going on, in the country and all around the world. And so obviously I guess this Connersville is just a small microcosm of what of what's happening, but it's happening in a lot of everywhere, and so we just want to get we want to get to the bottom of it, and we want to grow and become more vibrant like we were, and hopefully we can all of this will be will be a good thing, and we can do that. So that's what we're working on.